Okay, so today we are going to learn about rocks and the rock cycle. You are going to be taking your own Cornell notes, so you need to go ahead and copy down the essential question. Go ahead and pause this video to do that. In this video, you're going to learn the difference between igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks, what they are and how they form. If I showed you a rock at the end of this video, you should be able to tell me what type of rock it is, just based on its characteristics. And then finally, if I showed you a rock and told you where I found it, you should be able to tell me if it's igneous, sedimentary, or metamorphic. So first thing I want to talk about is the difference between minerals, which is what you took a quiz on yesterday, and rocks. So we've already talked about what makes a mineral, so that's over here on the right hand side. But basically rocks, the way that they are different is because they are a mixture of minerals all together. And then also, unlike minerals, they can be organic. So they can be made of animal or human remains, and also they can be man-made. So we talked about minerals are classified in many ways, but one of those ways is chemical composition, whereas rocks are identified by what minerals they have inside of them and how they were formed. So again, the three types of rocks are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. So first things first, we're going to go through each one, talk about how they are formed and some of the important characteristics of each one. Again, make sure that you are writing these down in your Cornell notes. So the very first type is igneous rocks. So igneous actually comes from the word ignite, I-G-N-I-T-E. And ignite means like you're starting, for example, a fire. So if you can remember that igneous and ignite are related, that will help you remember what igneous rocks are, because igneous rocks form when magma or lava cools and it gets hard. So if you've ever seen a volcano when it erupts, obviously the lava is kind of like an orangish red color because it's super hot, and then as it cools down it turns black. The lava cools and turns black. So igneous rocks are, a lot of the times you're going to see them looking black and glassy and shiny, and that's again because they are made of lava. There are two types. You do not need to know necessarily the two different types, but just to kind of touch base on them. Intrusive igneous rocks are when the magma cools slowly beneath the surface, and then extrusive is when the lava is on top of the surface and it cools. So you can kind of see most of the time when we're talking about igneous rocks, we're talking about extrusive because we're talking about they're black because they cooled on top of the earth, whereas the intrusive ones, they're not all the way black because the magma is inside of the surface of the earth, so it's mixed with some of the other dirt and soil and things like that. The next part about igneous rocks is any type of rock can be changed to an igneous rock. So we'll kind of go through how that happens, but two of the main words that you definitely need to write in your notes under igneous rocks are melting and cooling, because igneous rocks form when lava melts and cools. That's how any rock can be turned into an igneous rock. So again, the key words there for igneous are melting and cooling. Definitely make sure that those two words are in your notes under igneous. The next type of rock is sedimentary. Sedimentary rocks are made of sediment, and if you don't know what that is basically when you have a bunch of different types of rocks and soil, all of those are types of sediment. So sedimentary rocks are the most common rocks. Definitely put that in your notes. More than likely, if you see a rock on the surface of Earth, which is what we walk on, most of the time there are sedimentary rocks. And sedimentary rocks are formed when we have any sort of weather like storms, tornadoes, hurricanes. So all of those types of weather basically causes dirt and soil and things from sand all to be put in the air through wind. And what happens is they all get pushed together and compacted together, and that makes a rock. So basically, they a lot of the times include remains of plants or animals because, again, they're coming from the dirt. So if you think about an animal, most of the time when it dies, it ends up somewhat in the dirt. Even if another animal tries to eat it, you're also going to have different bones and things that end up in the dirt. And they can also, inside of the dirt, we have other types of rocks that are already down in the dirt. And so basically, when some sort of weather happens, a storm, a hurricane, a tornado, wind, any of that, all those things, the remains of animals, any kind of dirt, soil, all these things basically get put into the air and get compacted and cemented together, which forms a rock. And then the last part says the texture is determined by the size of the particle of the sediment. So basically there's a lot of different types of sedimentary rocks. They don't all look the same. It all depends on what types of sediment or things from the earth that are put into the air. Just like igneous rocks, all types of rocks can be changed into sedimentary rocks. So, basically, let's say I have an igneous rock that formed when lava cools. Well, if it ends up sitting on the ground and then a storm happens, it can mix with other types of things in the soil and other types of animal remains and things like that. And when it mixes with those things, it becomes a sedimentary rock. So it essentially changes from igneous to sedimentary. And again, anytime that you see something talking about weathering, erosion, any kind of sediments that are being compacted together or cemented together, those are all clue words that you are creating a sedimentary rock. Okay, so again, make sure that you have these key words under sedimentary, so weathering and erosion, compacting and cementing. The next type of rock is metamorphic rock. So the key word there that makes up metamorphic is morph. Morph means that you're changing. So metamorphic rocks is when you have rocks that have made it way down into the earth. So maybe you had a sedimentary rock and it was sitting on top of the earth where we walk on the crust of the earth. But over time it got pushed down and pushed down and pushed down. Well, eventually when rocks get pushed down further into the earth, it gets a lot hotter the deeper that you go. And then there's a lot of pressure as well. So that heat and the pressure from being so down deep into the earth causes it to form a new type of rock. So you can see with metamorphic rocks, a lot of the times you'll kind of see these layers. You can kind of see what I'm talking about in this picture. And basically what that is again, the earth is pushing down pressure on the rock, which causes it to have these layers. And then there's two types. We're not going to talk too much about those two types, but just to kind of show you, these are the two types of metamorphic rocks. They don't all look the same. And just like with igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks, any rock can be changed into a metamorphic rock. So let's pretend like we have an igneous rock and it just came out of a volcano. It was lava and it cooled, but then it got pushed way down deep into the earth. Let's say it's right down here somewhere. But you can see it gets really hot down in these levels of earth. And so we have heat and pressure that are happening to it, and that's going to form a metamorphic rock. Or let's say you have a sedimentary rock and it's hanging out right here, and then the sediment starts sinking. Well, if it gets way down deep into the earth, then it can be changed by the heat and the pressure, and it would become a metamorphic rock. So make sure that you have the keywords heat and pressure. Anytime that you see that, that's a good clue that it's going to be a metamorphic rock. So now that you've learned the 3 types, this is the rock cycle. So you can see there's tons and tons of different arrows. And what they're trying to show you here is there's not just one life cycle of a rock. So it's not just saying, okay, an igneous rock is going to turn to a sedimentary rock and then it's going to turn to metamorphic. No, that's wrong, okay? Metamorphic rocks can change to igneous rocks or sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks can change to igneous or metamorphic. Igneous rocks can change to sedimentary or metamorphic. It all depends on what happens to it. So I'm just going to give you one quick example. Let's say I have an igneous rock and then it gets stuck down in the earth. Well, that heat and pressure is going to cause it to change to a metamorphic rock. However, if I have another igneous rock and it doesn't get pushed down in the earth, let's say it goes and it sits on top of the earth's crust and then a tornado happens. Well, that's going to break it up into different pieces of dirt, and then eventually those pieces of dirt are going to compact together, which would make a sedimentary rock. So it can change into anything. It just depends on what happens to it. You can also tell what type of rock something is just by its location. So, for example, we said that igneous rocks are formed by lava from a volcano. So if you find a rock and it's very, very close to where a volcano happened, then you know more than likely it's going to be an igneous rock. We said sedimentary rocks are the most popular type of rock, or they're the ones that we see the most. And so if you see a rock just hanging out by the river, or you see a rock on your way to school, or if you just see a rock in your backyard, more than likely that is a sedimentary rock, because again, sedimentary rocks are rocks that are formed by different weathering conditions. So it could have been an igneous rock, but it got changed. Or it could have been a metamorphic rock, but it got changed by the weather. And then finally, if you are a geologist and you are digging for rocks way down deep into the earth, then you are going to more than likely find metamorphic rocks, because again, metamorphic is going to be way down deep inside of the earth. So we talked about minerals have a lot of different colors, and so do rocks. So rocks are made up of lots of different types of minerals. They're not all the same. So even if you have an igneous rock, there's not just one type of igneous rock. There's several different types. So you can kind of see these are all sedimentary, these are all metamorphic, and these are igneous. They don't look the same. So I want you to take a second and I want you to read about limestone. There's a little section here for you to read, and then I want you to try to see what type of rock you think it is. Is it igneous? Is it sedimentary? Or is it metamorphic, and why? You can pause this video to read and come back to check. So limestone is a sedimentary rock. So a couple of things lead you to see that. If you look, you can see it's made of lots of different types of fossils. You can actually see them in the rock. You can also, it says it's made of fossils, which are animal remains, and it says it's made of sediment.